Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a case that's, well, profoundly disturbing and genuinely historic in the context of Australian crime.
It really is a case that pushes boundaries in terms of violence and its aftermath.
Exactly. Our mission, as always, is to go deep, to chart the course of events, the trajectory of extreme violence over decades that led to one horrific night. We need to pull out those critical details, the surprising turns that really explain how things got to that point.
And the person at the center of this is Katherine Mary Knight, born back in 1955. She's a name etched into Australia's legal history, not just for the sheer brutality of her crime, but for the sentence she received.
That sentence is key, isn't it? It sets her apart. We have to keep that legal consequence in mind as we trace everything that came before.
Absolutely. Knight murdered her partner, John Charles Thomas Price, in February 2000. But the historic part, she became the very first woman in Australia sentenced to life imprisonment without any possibility of parole.
Life without parole. And her papers were marked. What was the phrase?
Definitely never to be released. It's about as final as it gets in the justice system.
An extraordinary statement from the court. So, our focus today isn't just on the murder itself, horrific as it was. We need to understand the decades of escalating violence, the trauma, the psychological factors that led up to it, and especially those shocking, unprecedented acts she committed after the murder.
That's right. We're essentially looking for the blueprint, the psychological and circumstantial factors that built towards this culmination. It wasn't a sudden snap. It was a long, dark road.
Understanding that sentence means understanding the history. This was, as you say, a culmination.
Precisely.
Okay, let's start at the beginning then. Part one, the foundations of violence. We need to look at her early life, the environment that shaped her in New South Wales. What can you tell us?
Well, the sources paint a picture that's described as highly unconventional and deeply dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And honestly, that feels like an understatement. Knight was born in 1955, one of twin girls. Her family situation was volatile right from the get-go. Her mother, Barbara Ruffin, already had 4 sons with her husband, John Ruffin.
Right.
But then she started an affair with Ken Charles Knight.
Which caused problems locally.
Big problems. The backlash was apparently so intense that Barbara and Ken had to move away to Moree. And crucially, they left the original 4 sons behind.
Left them? Where did they go?
2 stayed with their father, John Ruffin, and the 2 younger ones were sent off to live with an aunt down in Sydney. It was a fractured start. The older boys did eventually rejoin the mother and Ken Knight after their father died, but, that early instability, that separation, it sets a tone.
Definitely. And what was the home environment like with Ken Knight?
Toxic is probably the word. The sources are consistent. Ken Knight was described as a violent alcoholic.
Oh, violent.
Extremely. The reports state he would rape Barbara, Catherine's mother, up to 10 times a day. Just constant, brutal violence was the backdrop to Katherine Knight's childhood.
That's horrific. And how did the mother, Barbara, cope with this? Or how did she frame it for her daughters?
Well, this is where it gets even more damaging, psychologically speaking. Barbara would apparently share very intimate and very negative details about her sex life with her daughters. She expressed a deep hatred for sex and for men.
So the messages about intimacy were all negative.
Entirely negative, rooted in suffering and obligation. And when Katherine herself later complained about unwanted sexual acts happening within the family.
She alleged abuse within the family.
Yes, frequent sexual assault by several family members, not her father. She excluded him up until she was about 11. Psychiatrists who assessed her later accepted these allegations, and they were largely confirmed by other family members.
And her mother's response to these complaints?
Her advice was simply to endure it. Stop complaining, just put up with it.
Wow. To be told to just endure violation, that normalizes abuse on such a fundamental level. No sense of boundaries, no agency.
It's a foundation of trauma, isn't it? It likely explains so much of her later inability to form healthy relationships or manage boundaries. The normalization of violence, sexual and otherwise, was just woven into her upbringing.
And there was another layer of complexity, wasn't there? Something about identity.
Yes, another layer of dysfunction. The family had indigenous Australian heritage through Barbara's great-grandmother from the Moray area. Barbara was reportedly proud of it, but
they kept it secret.
Completely secret because of the intense racism in the area at the time.
Okay.
So you have this hidden identity, this enforced secrecy, adding tension and, well, another form of division within the family.
Amidst all this chaos and trauma, did she have any positive connections? Anyone she felt close to?
Just one, it seems. Her uncle, Oscar Knight. He was a champion horseman, and she apparently felt a very close bond with him.
Okay, a positive figure then.
Yes. But that connection was tragically cut short. He died by suicide in 1969. Knight was devastated, absolutely crushed. Losing that one stable figure, it was another profound trauma. She still claims his ghost visits her.
That's quite telling. So moving on to her school years, did these early experiences manifest in her behavior there?
Oh, definitely. At Muswellbrook High School, the pattern of instability continued. She was remembered as a bit of a loner, but also a bully.
A bully?
Yeah, threatening smaller kids. She even assaulted one boy with a weapon at one point. Early signs of aggression.
But there was a contradiction, wasn't there?
A really stark one. Because when she wasn't, in a rage, she could apparently be a model student. She even won good behavior awards.
That's bizarre. Model student 1 minute, violent bully the next.
It points to that extreme volatility, maybe the early signs of the personality disorder later diagnosed. These two sides couldn't seem to coexist peacefully.
She didn't finish school, though.
No. Left at 15. Couldn't read or write properly at that stage. But then she found what she apparently called her dream job.
Which was?
Working at a local abattoir.
An abattoir. Given what happens later, that feels significant.
Hugely significant. She started just cutting up offal, which is messy work, but she was good at it. She quickly moved up to boning a skilled role requiring precision with knives.
And this earned her her own set of professional knives.
Her own set of butcher's knives.
Yeah.
And here's the detail that just sends a chill down your spine looking back.
What does she do with them?
She didn't leave them at work. She took them home and hung them over her bed.
Over her bed?
Yes. Explicitly stating, according to sources, that they would always be handy if needed. And she kept doing that, keeping those professional slaughtering tools right there in her most personal space until the day she was incarcerated.
That is incredibly unsettling. A constant physical reminder of potential violence.
And people in the town, Aberdeen, later recalled she had this tendency even then to physically threaten anyone who crossed her. The knives weren't just tools of the trade. They were becoming tools of intimidation in her personal life, too.
Okay, so this unstable foundation, this early exposure to violence, and now this proficiency with weapons, it all starts coming together as she enters adult relationships. Let's move to part 2. The escalating patterns of domestic violence.
Yes, and you see this escalation immediately, especially linked to intense jealousy and that deep-seated fear of abandonment we talked about. These are hallmarks of borderline personality disorder, the diagnosis she eventually received.
Her first marriage was to David Kellett, right? A co-worker from the abattoir.
That's right, from 1974 to 1984, so a decade. He was also a heavy drinker and apparently carried his own trauma from some really difficult experiences working on the railways, witnessing deaths, rescues.
So perhaps vulnerable himself.
Quite possibly. It was Knight who pushed for the marriage. The wedding day itself sounds chaotic. She apparently turned up on her motorbike, and Kellett was already drunk.
Not exactly a fairy tale beginning.
Not at all. And the most ominous sign came from Knight's own mother, Barbara.
What did she say?
She warned Kellett directly. Told him flat out, if you upset Katherine, if you cheat on her, you'll be in serious trouble. She knew her daughter's potential for violence.
And did the violence start quickly?
Immediately.
Yeah.
On their wedding night, Knight tried to strangle Kellett.
Strangle him? Why? What triggered that?
Because he fell asleep after they'd had sex only 3 times.
3 times wasn't enough, so she tried to kill him.
The sheer lack of proportion is staggering, isn't it? Attempting murder on your wedding night over, it just shows the immediate lack of impulse control, the extreme rage right from the start.
And the physical violence didn't stop there.
Far from it. While she was pregnant, she found out he was late home from a darts competition. Her reaction. She gathered up all his clothes, all his shoes, took them outside, and burned them.
Burned everything he owned.
Everything. And then, when he did get home, she grabbed a frying pan.
A frying pan? Like a weapon?
Yes. And hit him across the back of the head with it. Fractured his skull. He collapsed at a neighbor's house. Using everyday objects as weapons became a pattern.
And yet, he didn't press charges.
She convinced him not to. Which shows her manipulative side, right? She could inflict serious harm and then talk her way out of the consequences, reinforcing that she could get away with it.
But things really spiraled after their first child was born.
Yes, Melissa Ann, born in 1976. Kellett briefly left her for someone else, and that abandonment triggered a complete and very public breakdown.
This is when she was diagnosed with postnatal depression.
Correct. The day after he left, she was diagnosed. She first pushed the baby, Melissa, who was only 2 months old, violently down the street in her pram. But then she did something truly horrifying.
The railway line incident.
Yes, she took the 2-month-old baby and placed her on a railway line just minutes before a train was due.
My God, was the baby?
She was saved, miraculously. A local homeless man known as Old Ted saw what happened and snatched the baby off the tracks just in time.
The calculation involved in that? It's unthinkable. What happened next? Did she get help?
Well, she went on a rampage, stole an axe, started threatening people randomly. She slashed a woman's face with one of her knives, demanding to be driven to Queensland.
It just kept escalating.
It culminated at a service station. She grabbed a young boy, took him hostage, held a knife to him. The police eventually had to disarm her using brooms, trying to keep their distance from that knife.
And when she was hospitalized, did she express remorse?
No. She clearly stated her intentions. She told hospital staff she wanted to kill the mechanic who'd fixed Kellett's car, then kill Kellett himself and his mother.
And Kellett. He went back to her after all that.
He did. They had a second daughter, Natasha Marie. He seems to have felt obligated, maybe responsible. He moved back in to support her. It's that classic, tragic cycle of abuse and dependence. The marriage finally ended in '84.
Okay, so after Kellett, there was David Saunders. This relationship from '86 to '89 seems like the violence became even more targeted, more psychologically cruel.
Definitely. Saunders was again subject to her extreme jealousy. He kept moving out. She'd convince him to come back, the usual pattern. But one incident in May 1987, it's pure psychological terrorism.
What happened?
Saunders had a dingo pup, just 2 months old. Knight, in front of him, took one of her knives and cut the puppy's throat.
In front of him? Why?
To show him what would happen if he ever cheated on her. She used the death of his pet as a graphic, terrifying object lesson, a direct, calculated threat.
That's monstrous.
And immediately after doing that, she knocked him unconscious with a frying pan. Later on, in other arguments, she hit him in the face with an iron and stabbed him in the stomach with scissors. The weapon choice just escalated.
And during this time, their home environment started reflecting this darkness, too.
Oh, profoundly. They brought a house together, and the way she decorated it, it's chilling. No surface was left uncovered. Walls, ceilings, everywhere. There were animal skins, skulls, horns, rusty old animal traps.
Some traps.
Yeah. Leather jackets, old boots, but also weapons everywhere, machetes, rakes, pitchforks. It was described as this oppressive landscape filled with symbols of death and potential violence. A visual representation of her inner state, perhaps.
And when Saunders finally managed to get away from her?
He went into hiding. But Knight wasn't done. She went to the police and claimed she was afraid of him.
She played the victim.
Successfully. She managed to get an apprehended violence order, an AVO, basically a restraining order taken out against Saunders, the very man she'd been terrorizing. It shows her capacity for manipulation, for twisting the system to her advantage.
Incredible. So after Saunders, there was a brief relationship with John Chillingworth.
Yes, from '91 to '94. They had a son together, Eric, but then she left Chillingworth for the man who would become her final victim, John Price.
So by the time she gets involved with John Price, there's this undeniable decades-long pattern established. Intense jealousy, manipulation, using any object at hand as a weapon, escalating physical violence, and leaving a trail of traumatized partners.
Exactly. Each relationship seems to build on the last, escalating the danger. She's honed her methods of control and violence.
Which brings us to part 3, the final partner, John Price, and the lead-up to the murder. He was apparently well-liked, a terrific bloke, people said, had kids of his own.
Yes. Born the same year as Knight, 1955. He had 3 children from a previous marriage. The 2 older ones lived with him.
Was he aware of her reputation when they got together?
Sources say yes. He was aware of her violent history when she moved in around 1995, which raises the question, why? Initially, things were apparently okay. His kids liked her. He had a good job in the mines. The phrase used was life was a bunch of roses at first.
So she could be charming when she wanted to be. Mask the underlying issues.
It seems so, able to draw people in. But that stability didn't last. The turning point seems to have been in 1998.
What happened then?
The trigger was his refusal to marry her. For Knight, marriage might have represented ultimate ownership, security against abandonment. His refusal was a major rejection in her eyes.
And her reaction wasn't immediate violence this time.
No, it was colder, more calculated, an act of pure sabotage. She found out he'd scavenged some out-of-date medical kits from a rubbish tip at work. Minor stuff, really.
Okay.
She videotaped these kits, framing it as theft, and sent the tape straight to his boss.
Just to get him fired.
Exactly. And it worked. After 17 years at that company, John Price was fired because of her actions. She destroyed his livelihood.
The betrayal is immense. He must have kicked her out then.
He did, immediately. It's hard to imagine reconciling after something like that, destroying his career, his ability to provide for his kids.
But they did get back together.
They did, bizarrely. A few months later, Price resumed the relationship. Maybe loneliness, maybe hope, who knows. But, and this is important, he refused to let her move back into his house.
So the dynamics shifted. He set a boundary.
He tried. But the fighting apparently got much worse during this period, and Price became more isolated. His friends, seeing the toxic relationships, started pulling away. He was losing his support network just when the danger was escalating.
Which brings us to those final chilling days in February 2000. The violence had already reached a critical point.
Yes, shortly before the end, Knight had actually stabbed Price in the chest during an argument. That was the final straw for him. He ended it, kicked her out again for good.
And he took legal steps this time.
He did. On February 28, 2000, he went to the Scone Magistrates Court and got a restraining order against her. An AVO.
So he knew he was in danger. He tried to protect himself legally.
He absolutely knew. And this is the part that's just heartbreaking. That very same afternoon, after getting the AVO, he was talking to his coworkers.
What did he say?
He told them, clear as day, if I don't turn up for work tomorrow, it's because she's murdered me.
He predicted his own murder.
He did. They begged him not to go home, stay somewhere else, anywhere else. But he refused.
Why? Why would he go back if he felt that?
His reason was chillingly selfless, in a way. He said he was afraid that if he wasn't there, she would harm his children instead. He felt he had to go back to protect them.
Believing his presence was the only thing keeping them safe?
Exactly. But when he got home, he found Knight had already arranged for the children to be away for the night, at a sleepover.
So the protection he thought he was providing, it wasn't needed at that moment. He was alone with her potential presence.
He was. He spent some time with neighbors, seemed normal enough, then went to bed around 11 p.m. Tragically unaware the children were safe elsewhere, and he was walking right into the trap he feared.
Which leads us into the horrific events of that night and the next morning, Part 4, the murder of John Price and the aftermath. The level of premeditation seems undeniable here.
The evidence points strongly towards planning, yes. Earlier that day, she'd bought new black lingerie, perhaps trying to set a scene of intimacy first.
And the videotape.
Right. She also videotaped her children, making comments that investigators later saw as a kind of crude verbal will. It suggests she was preparing for something final.
So she arrived at Price's house. What happened then?
She seemed normal initially, watched TV, took a shower. Then she woke Price up for sex, maintained this facade of normalcy, of reconciliation perhaps. And then she waited until he fell back asleep.
And attacked him while he slept.
That's what the forensic evidence suggests. The first blows with a butcher's knife came while he was asleep, vulnerable.
But he woke up. There was a struggle.
A desperate one. He woke up, tried to turn on the light. He fought back, tried to escape. The blood evidence showed he was chased through the house.
Did he make it outside?
He actually managed to open the front door, got onto the porch briefly, but either she dragged him back inside or he stumbled back into the hallway. That's where he collapsed and died from blood loss.
How many times was he stabbed?
The autopsy found at least 37 stab wounds, front and back, many hitting vital organs. It was an absolute frenzy of violence. Overkill.
Using those butcher's knives she was so proficient with.
Exactly. And after he was dead, there's this strange moment of calm calculation again. She went out to an ATM in Aberdeen and withdrew $1,000 from his bank account.
Just went to get cash. After committing murder.
Bizarre, isn't it? Then she returned to the house.
The scene wasn't discovered until the next morning.
Right. Around 6 a.m., a neighbor and one of Price's workmates, worried because he hadn't shown up, went to the house. They saw blood on the front door and called the police immediately.
And when the police got inside?
They had to break down the back door. Inside, they found Knight, passed out. She'd taken an overdose of pills, seemingly an attempt at suicide after the murder, and everything else.
Yes. Everything else. This is where the case becomes truly unprecedented, isn't it? The post-mortem acts.
Utterly unprecedented in Australia, certainly for a female offender. These acts happened several hours after Price was already dead.
What exactly did she do?
She used her abattoir skills. She skinned John Price.
Skinned him? Completely?
Yes. Removed his skin, reportedly in one large piece, like she would an animal carcass. And then she took his skin and hung it from a meat hook.
A meat hook in the house?
A meat hook she had recently installed herself on the architrave, the wooden frame, above the doorway into the lounge room. Like a trophy.
The installation of the hook beforehand That suggests premeditation of this specific act, doesn't it?
It strongly implies it, yes.
Hmm.
The combination of her professional skill, the specific tool, the hook, and the act itself is just profoundly disturbing, normalizing the unthinkable through her profession.
And it didn't stop with the skinning.
No. After
Yeah.
hanging the skin, she decapitated him, and then she began to cook.
Cook parts of his body.
Yes, she cooked parts of his flesh, and she prepared side dishes. Baked potato, pumpkin, carrots, beetroot, zucchini, cabbage, squash. A full roast dinner, essentially, with gravy.
And served it.
She plated it up. 2 meals set at the dinner table.
2 meals. Why 2?
Beside each plate, she placed a little handwritten note bearing the name of one of Price's children.
She was going to feed him to his own children.
That was the chilling interpretation by investigators and the court. Thankfully, the children never returned to the house that morning. They were spared that unimaginable horror.
Was there any indication she tried to eat it herself?
There was a third plate of the cooked flesh, found discarded on the back lawn. This led to speculation, later used somewhat in her defense regarding amnesia, that maybe she tried to eat it herself and couldn't, perhaps recoiling from the act.
But the cooking itself was recent when the police arrived.
Very recent. His head was found in a large pot on the stove simmering with vegetables. The pot was still warm, maybe 40 or 50 degrees Celsius. The cooking had likely just finished when the police broke in.
And the rest of his body? How was it left?
The remaining body parts, the torso and limbs, were arranged in the lounge room in a way the court later described as an act of supreme contempt.
How so?
His left arm was draped over an empty soft drink bottle, like a casual pose, and his legs were crossed. It was seen as a deliberate, final act of defilement, showing utter disdain for him even after death.
And she left a note.
Yes, a handwritten note, found on a photograph of Price. It was smeared with blood and had small pieces of flesh on it.
What did the note say?
It contained rambling, poorly spelled, but very serious accusations against Price. Claims of sexual assault involving him and his children.
Were these claims ever substantiated?
No. Police investigated them thoroughly and found them to be completely groundless, fabricated.
So the note wasn't a motive, it was justification after the fact.
That's how it was viewed, a desperate last-minute attempt to paint herself as a victim, acting out of revenge for fictitious crimes, which again points to that manipulative aspect, that refusal to accept responsibility.
Okay. The sheer horror of these events is almost impossible to process. Let's move to part 5, the legal reckoning. How did the justice system even approach prosecuting a crime like this?
Well, the system knew immediately this was something extraordinary. Knight's lawyers initially offered a plea deal. Guilty to manslaughter, not murder.
Was that even considered?
No. Rejected outright by the prosecution. The charge was murder, plain and simple, late in March 2001. Initially, she pleaded not guilty.
But the trial itself barely got underway, did it? The jury selection was unusual.
Highly unusual. When the trial was finally set to begin, the judge, Justice Barry O'Keefe, took the extraordinary step of addressing the 60 potential jurors directly. He warned them about the extremely graphic nature of the photographic evidence they would have to look at.
And he offered them a way out.
Yes. He offered anyone the chance to be excused right then and there, simply because of the disturbing evidence. 5 people took him up on it immediately. Several more asked to be excused after the witness list was read out. The court itself acknowledged the potential trauma involved for jurors.
And then the very next day, before the trial could really start,
Knight changed her plea to guilty.
guilty of murder, just
Yeah.
like that.
Just like that. The jury pool was dismissed. But because of the severity, Justice O'Keefe ordered an immediate overnight psychiatric assessment. He needed to be absolutely certain she understood the full consequences of pleading guilty to this murder.
What did the psychiatric reports find, especially regarding her claims of amnesia about the postmortem acts?
It was complex. Most of the psychiatrists believed her claim of amnesia or dissociation during the skinning and cooking was genuine, a psychological defense mechanism against the horror. But importantly, they all agreed she was legally sane at the time of the murder itself.
And the diagnosis.
2 of the psychiatrists explicitly diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder, BPD.
Which fits the patterns we've discussed. The intense fear of abandonment, the unstable relationships, the explosive anger, the impulsivity.
Exactly. BPD provides a clinical framework for understanding that extreme emotional volatility, the black and white thinking, and how perceived rejection, like Price refusing to marry her or breaking up with her, could trigger such catastrophic reactions.
But crucially, even after pleading guilty, she never really took full responsibility, did she?
No public explanation for the change of plea was ever given. And she continued to maintain she couldn't remember the worst parts, effectively denying responsibility for the most horrific elements, even while admitting guilt for the murder. That lack of full accountability was noted.
Was she emotional during the sentencing?
There was one moment, during the sentencing hearing, when the prosecutor, Timothy Lyons, had to describe the skinning and decapitation in clinical detail for the court record. Knight became hysterical, completely lost control, and had to be sedated. So on some level, the reality broke through, even if she claimed dissociation.
Then came the sentence itself on November 8th, 2001, a landmark moment.
Justice O'Keefe's ruling was powerful. He focused on two main things: the almost unimaginable gravity of the crime, especially the postmortem acts, and Knight's complete lack of remorse or genuine acceptance of responsibility.
He determined the crime itself demanded the maximum penalty.
Yes. He stated that the sheer cruelty, the defilement, the skinning, the hanging of the skin, the cooking, and particularly the intention to serve the remains to Price's children. It demonstrated a level of wickedness that placed it in the absolute worst category of murder.
And the sentence reflected that. Life imprisonment, no possibility of parole.
With that specific notation added, definitely never to be released.
Making her the first woman in Australia to receive such a sentence, it set a precedent for crimes involving extreme desecration and malice, particularly when directed towards children, even if indirectly.
Did she ever try to appeal?
She did, yes. In 2006, she appealed against the severity of the life sentence, arguing it was too harsh.
And the outcome?
The New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal shut it down completely. They dismissed the appeal, upholding the original sentence. Justice McClellan, delivering the judgment, didn't mince words. He called the crime appalling and nearly unimaginable in a civilized society.
So the historic sentence stood, confirmed by the higher court. Absolutely. The judicial system was united in its view that this crime warranted the ultimate penalty available.
It's strange to think about her life now, after all these years locked away. What do we know about her time in prison?
Well, reports from around 2017 indicated something quite unexpected. She's held at Silverwater Women's Correctional Center, and apparently she'd taken on a sort of leadership role among the inmates.
A leadership role? How?
Acting as a mediator, helping to resolve disputes between other prisoners. And perhaps most surprisingly, reports suggested she had a clean record inside no violence, no prison charges since she was incarcerated.
That's a stark contrast to her life before, maybe the highly structured environment, without the triggers of intimate relationships and potential abandonment.
It's possible. It might suggest that the BPD, while potentially underlying, manifested most dangerously in the context of those intense, unstable personal relationships. Prison removed those specific triggers.
So wrapping this up, if we look back at the whole deep dive, we've traced this really terrifying path. From childhood trauma and abuse, likely compounded by untreated BPD,
through decades of escalating domestic violence, partner after partner suffering physical and psychological abuse.
Culminating in a murder that wasn't just brutal, but involved post-mortem acts that shattered societal taboos and forced the legal system to respond with its most extreme penalty.
Absolutely. The consistent pattern of violence, the specific skills learned in the abattoir being turned to horrific use, the manipulation, the lack of remorse, and especially the calculated cruelty directed towards Price's children through the planned meal. All these elements combined to make this case and its sentence truly historic. The legal system saw it as proof of an enduring danger that could never be safely released.
So, for you, the listener, what does this case show us? I think it's a stark reminder of how deep-seated patterns of violence, often rooted in early trauma and fueled by specific psychological conditions like BPD, can escalate over time. Escalate to a point where they just completely break through the boundaries of what we consider human behavior.
It's a study in the failure of intervention, perhaps, but also in the profound impact of untreated mental illness when combined with a capacity for extreme violence and manipulation.
And it leaves us with a final, quite unsettling thought to consider, doesn't it? Especially regarding her background and the specific nature of the crime.
Yes, that connection to her dream job.
Right. Katherine Knight found her calling, her professional expertise, working in an abattoir. She became highly skilled with butcher's knives, the tools of that trade. And she kept those tools, her professional knives, hanging over her bed at home, handy if needed, right up until she was imprisoned. So the question to mull over is this. In a life defined by such calculated, brutal violence and a final crime involving methods straight out of that workplace, was the abattoir just a job for Katherine Knight? Or was it, in some dark way, the training ground, the place that not only gave her the tools, but perhaps normalized the very cruelty and detachment required to commit acts that remain almost unimaginable?